Probably have heard is an expert on a variety of topics dealing with the environment and what we're doing to it and what we can do for it. And tonight he's going to talk about the state of bees in our country, and I'm sure a little bit about their lifestyle and natural
Absolutely.
Environment. Mike travels the Philadelphia area, offers lectures, walks, and other programs on nature and the environment. And he talks about issues like microplastics and the preservation of monarch butterflies, which will be our next topic, I'm sure, when he can fit it in his schedule. In the last 3 years, his programs have reached more than 3,000 people. Mike is also author of Wild Philly, Exploring Amazing Nature in and Around Philadelphia, and it features 25 nature walks you and your family can take in this region. It also has tons of additional information about nature and the environment. He's selling his books after the talk, and we'll mention that later in his remarks. This is the 4th time speaking in the Radnor Township ambiance. He's previously lectured here on climate change, how mushrooms might save the world, and about his book, Wild Philly. He's an environmental educator with 40 years of experience teaching through lectures, walks, newspapers, essays, and radio. He's a former nonprofit executive director and also well-known to public radio listeners as Mike, the all-natural science guy. That's been on an award-winning children's radio show called Kids Corner on WXPN. He's answered children's questions about nature and the environment for more than 35 years. So he's not going to be blessed by you all. You can withstand children's questions. You can handle yours. Mike's work has earned him the title of Citizen Hero from the Philadelphia Inquirer, and he's an environmental educator of the year and outstanding conservation educator from Pennsylvania Environmental Groups. So present to you, Mike.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. I'm sorry for the awkward setup. I'll try to turn around and say hi to you guys every so often, and hello to anybody on Zoom. Let's see. Okay. And do we know that technically we're okay with Zoom and people are there?
I can hear it in my ear, yeah.
You can hear, okay, good, all's good. All right. And I want to thank Dan and Radnor's EAC for bringing me here tonight and several times, and thank Amber and the Radnor Conservancy for sponsoring this as well. Make sure to support the Radnor Conservancy. So thank you so much. Okay, let's dive into this. Dan mentioned some of the other programs that I travel the area with. I've assembled the only talk that I've seen so far on what climate change means to the Philly region. I gave it here a little bit ago and have done a lot of this during this Earth Day, Earth Week, Earth Month. Monarch butterflies, we're going to talk. I have a whole lecture on the life cycle, the extraordinary life cycle of the monarch butterfly. They're not here yet. They're on their way. We should see them soon. They're coming from Mexico. But somehow in the fall, 4 generations later, the butterfly knows how to get back to those secluded mountain valleys in Mexico where its great-great-great-grandmother was. It's a crazy story. And we'll touch on monarchs here tonight in just a little bit. We don't need a new environmental issue to worry about, but sadly we've got one. This is worth you reading into. Anyway, microplastic pollution is another one. So I give lots of different talks. Come on, buddy, what's up? There we go. It was being cranky. I also travel the region giving walks as well. So on my website, mikewildbacker.com, you can find all the a calendar of all the places I'm going to be. I'm not sure why, but it's not changing for me. There we go. It's being a little cranky. I hope this doesn't continue. This is very odd. Okay, I'm sorry for this, but I'm not sure what the big delay is in changing. Dan also mentioned I have a book called Wild Philly. It's got 25 walks in the 8 counties in southeastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey, plus 4 extra credit further afield. I normally sell those after these talks, but the printer happily is out of books and is between printing. So next time, there we go. But there's some information. So I don't know what to do about this, but I think it's because I'm in Zoom. Maybe it's taken up a lot of bandwidth, and so I'm nuts. What do I do about that? Okay. Because I want to go through slides quickly, so not as quickly as it's going to want to change for us. So let's dive into the topic at hand tonight about pollinators. And it is the dinner hour for a lot of us. I'm happy you're here during it, but maybe you're thinking about something like like this pizza, lots of food that we eat. Maybe you're thinking about right now. Oh, come on. Ah, there we go. See, normally it just goes like this.
Yeah.
But not now. And my apologies, anybody watching on Zoom. Come on. This is very, very odd. Or perhaps you're thinking about a good salad with full of cucumbers and peppers and things like that. Or, see, this was meant to be boom, 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 and we're not doing that. Fruit like this with lots of berries and melons.
You're making us hungry.
I know. I'm also torturing you with the speed of this. This is insane. So we can't do a show like this. What do I do?
Can you talk it?
I can.
What if we put an escape button and do not have the slideshow, but go over kind of.
I would close out everything else that you have open,
Yep.
if it doesn't need to be open.
And maybe put my, keep the Zoom open, but maybe my computer could drive the big screen, and you just tell me when to change.
Yeah, rather than running PowerPoint and Zoom,
Right.
run just,
Yes.
I will steal that.
Yep.
the Zoom onto the big screen.
By the way, this is Amber at Wood Levy. She is
I can jump in right now.
Yeah, good. Do it. Do it.
Executive Director of Radnor Conservancy,
Oh.
a partner of the Radnor EAC for years, and she's a co-sponsor of this presentation.
Yes, we are happy to be co-sponsoring on
Is it
some of the
snappier now?
lectures. This one and through into June, we'll be co-sponsoring on some of the lectures with the Radnor EAC. So we'll see you around. I put out some materials on the credenza, I guess is a word I get to use. Over here, some stuff about us and our hot off the press new newsletter. And on the center console here in the table in the center here, there's a day of giving coming up called Delco Gives. And if you didn't stop by and see us at the Wheels of Wind, there's a whole Radnor collaborative of nonprofits that we are doing it. The whole county does a day of giving, and so that's coming up on May 6th and 7th. So there's a little info on that on the table as well.
Great. Is that better?
Marginally. No.
Have the big screen run off my laptop.
That's what it's doing right now. Yeah.
It is.
Well, then why is he pressing the remote?
Yeah, maybe if it's instead of having to remove one step of technology and something.
Here, what if I advance
here-
it?
You want to do it?
Yeah, see if I can just do it manually.
Will it advance? I mean,
So
it's still on my computer.
he's sharing his screen, you're viewing his screen, that's
Oh.
plugged into that screen.
Yeah, see, that's the problem.
So the delay is on his computer with the slide transition.
So if you email your slides,
It's in the cloud, so it's not.
Oh, the dastardly cloud.
A lot of people in this room understand that.
You could ask ChatGPT.
And the reason I'm sweating is because I'm the IT guy. If you share it with him, he has access to Google Docs, so you should be able to get it through that.
Okay.
I'll let you handle it.
There.
Um,
Let's just do a momentary pause here.
I'm sorry, everybody.
Let's stop sharing your
That's
screen.
okay, that's okay, it's not your fault.
It was, a group of people under 30 years old.
And go to his name and transfer ownership back to him. You should just scroll over to the
Young
right.
children. Oh, there's little chairs, tables.
How do I transfer ownership?
If you click on that, there should be horizontal dots there.
So is this
Should be
Saturday?
transfer ownership or make host.
Is this Saturday?
Yeah.
So, do you need me to print
Okay.
that out?
Thank goodness you're here.
Okay, and if you share it with him or email it to him, I should be able to open it then.
Come on.
But this is the pollinator talk.
What's going on?
Your experience.
I'm hitting escape, but nothing's happening.
There we go. All right, now I can hear you. We're back in action.
All right, take two. You all ready? Thank you so much. All right. Well, you better move faster. Seriously.
It was, did you download it to my C
Ah,
drive?
there we go. Gotta hit. Ah, there we are.
Instead,
Dignified.
you solved it.
All right, so we're talking about food, and I was making you hungry, right, with some of this food here. And let's push on, but not just food that I'm thinking about right now. I'm thinking about things we drink like wine and coffee and even desserts, ice cream and apple pie. So if you like any of these things, you need to thank a pollinator, because all the foods I just gave you come to us from pollinators. The tomatoes in pizza, the fruit in fruit salad, chocolate, amazingly, is from pollinators. Apples, coffee, even half of the things in that salad. In fact, 1/3 of the food that we eat comes to us courtesy of pollinators. 1/3. Extraordinarily, about 98% of our vitamin C is provided by the food that pollinators provide. 70% of vitamin A, 55% of folic acid. Now that one doesn't ring a bell, probably a lot of people, but folic acid is what we need. Our body can't make it, but we need it to make DNA and RNA. So especially if you're an expectant mother, you need a lot of, right, you're going to be building lots of chromosomes. So folic acid becomes increasingly important for expectant mothers, but we need it too. So 55% of that, 74% of lipids, fats, which are the fuel that our cells burn. So those all come from the service of pollinators. In the US alone, pollinators add between 18 and $34 billion of economic value worldwide, 235 to $577 billion. So pollinators are giving us billions of dollars of services. So again, about 1 in every 3 bites of food that we eat comes to us courtesy of the work of pollinators. And specifically, let's drill down into a few of these. Tomatoes, right? Tomatoes are a fruit, though we treat them like a vegetable, but the tomato flower gets pollinated. Apples are pollinated by bees, oranges, and all the citric fruits, lemons, limes, etc., etc. All the berries, strawberries and blueberries, and so on, all of the squashes, the entire squash family, all of the beans and their cousins, the peas, all of the peppers, cucumbers, if you like pickles, avocados, if you like guacamole, even almonds and cashews come to us courtesy of pollinators. So pollinators provide just huge amounts of food. Grapes in jelly, in grape juice, and of course wine. The coffee bean comes from a flower that gets pollinated by insects. Chocolate comes from an orchid that is pollinated by insects. So does vanilla. And also, I should just add while I'm doing this that there are some important plants that are not insect pollinated, like wheat. Well, actually, the big 3 are not. They're wind pollinated. So wheat, like here, corn, and rice. Those big 3 are all not insect pollinated, but wind pollinated. So, but nonetheless, so much of everything else we eat comes to us. So put that aside for a moment. Separate from the whole issue of the food that we eat, if you're a wildflower, you need these ecosystem services of pollinators. Something like 75 to 90% of the world's wildflowers need pollinators. 70 to 90%. If you're a cardinal, you're a seed eater. But when you have babies in a nest, you are busy cramming caterpillars down their throats. And those caterpillars are insects, or the baby form of pollinating insects for the most part. So even if you're a cardinal, you need those insects to have babies. 96% of terrestrial bird species in North America feed insects to their young. One of the weird exceptions is the goldfinch. Love these if you have these at your bird feeders. But goldfinches feed a slurry of seeds into their babies. Almost everybody else is doing bugs. If you're a mom chickadee or a dad chickadee, you have to feed 10,000 caterpillars to your babies to fledge a whole nest. 10,000, which is something like 450 a day. So I think we're just trying to establish the fact that pollinators are important. Got that? And you see why I wanted the slides to move a little faster. So let's do Pollination 101, something you might not have had since, 7th grade, somewhere in there. Where on the right, we've got the male part of the flower. which is called the stamen, and the anther sits up here and makes the pollen and is held up high by a filament. The female part is all in the middle here. The ovary contains the ovule, this becomes the seed. The style holds up the stigma, and a pollen grain sits on the stigma and then drills down and fertilizes the ovule in here and becomes a seed. So you've got, now in this flower, it's might be too easy for the flowers to be self-pollinated, and you don't want that. So flowers and insects have worked out a lot of ways to make sure that that doesn't happen, and the two have co-evolved over many, many years. So many insects, like bees, have evolved over the millennia to transfer pollen from one flower to another. You know that. And of course, when you're a worker bee, a field bee, and you're visiting a flower, you're going to get covered in pollen, but you're also putting pollen in the pollen sac there. If you're a bee, you're sort of eating a diet of meat and potatoes. The meat, the protein is the pollen that's here. The potatoes, the carbohydrates, is the honey that they make. So that's honey from nectar, pollen, right? So meat and potatoes is kind of their diet. But look how the pollen isn't just there in the pollen sac. Look how the pollen is everywhere on the bee. Their bodies evolved to be hairy, so they just get covered in pollen. Look at that antenna. Even the antennae have pollen all over them. So they just got pollen everywhere. Here's a tomato flower, which perhaps you've grown yourself. A bumblebee will visit that. And look, there's the bumblebee, even has a pollen sac as well. They're taking that back. They have a smaller, less organized hive in the ground. I've actually never seen a bumblebee hive. I've always wanted to, but bumblebees are carrying pollen back to the hive as well. And once the flower becomes pollinated, the seed then can grow, right? And once it's fertilized. So the insects are fertilizing, helping fertilize flowers. And when the flower makes a seed, in many cases it covers the seed with fruit, right? To seduce us into eating it. Our job is to eat it and carry it farther away from the parents and disperse the seeds out there. So in the forest, wild animals are defecating seeds everywhere, and that's the strategy. Let's purposely make these seeds edible so that you carry them away and spread them in the forest. So there's pollination 101. Let's quickly meet a few of the pollinators. The honeybee that we always talk about is not native to North America. It is the Western European honeybee. We've got a couple of seats up here in the front.
That's okay, well, thank you for finding.
We got some good seats up front. We promise nobody up here bites. But bumblebees and even beetles are pollinators as well. So once you know what to look for, you can see them. Butterflies are great pollinators, as are their cousins, the moths. This is a weird moth who is day active and so looks a little bit like a butterfly. So it's got the clear butterfly wings. It's called a clear wing moth, but it's a moth nonetheless. Wasps are pollinators, good pollinators, amazingly. Flies pollinate a surprising number of flowers. And it's not just insects who are pollinators. Maybe you've had hummingbirds come to your yard. Maybe you have a hummingbird feeder. If you're a fan of tequila, you should thank a pollinator as well, because tequila comes from the blue agave plant, which is grown in Mexico, which is pollinated by a bat. Bats even serve as pollinators. So lots of different animals become pollinators, but if we're going to rank order who the most important, let's do the big five. Of course, honeybee is number one. The Western European honeybee is number one. Here is a hive full of thousands of bees, all of whom are sisters. All the workers are female. They're all sisters. They're all daughters of the queen. And when you come out, when you hatch in the hive, you go through a series of jobs. Your first job is just clearing out any kind of mess in the hive. You go through a whole number of things, and at the end, the ultimate job you get as a bee is to go out and collect stuff in the field. That's when you mature. But there they are. There are the sisters. Queens are sometimes easy to spot if you've ever seen an observation beehive. She's a lot bigger, no surprise, than the other bees. Look at the bees, the workers around her. They're all tending court, making sure she's okay. They're also getting chemicals off her and spreading those across the hive. Those are giving cues to the rest of the other members of the hive. But look how their thoraxes are all kind of fuzzy and hairy because they're going to be collecting stuff on them, but hers is nice and smooth up here. So big abdomen, and she's just an egg machine, laying eggs all day long. But if you're a worker bee and you found some good nectar, you're going to bring it back, and you've got a very special way to tell your sisters in the hive what you found. You of course dance, and maybe you bumped across the bee dance, but they will do a waggle dance. They will walk. Let's say if they walk straight up the hive and they're waggling, straight up means fly right into the sun. Straight down means fly directly away from the sun. So they're giving a compass. They're using the hive as a compass. The intensity of the waggle is the quality of the food, and the length of the waggle is is the distance you should go. So they're giving all this information, right? There's one on the right, which is just kind of a spastic, a really fast dance, which means it's right out front. You can't miss it. So they have that dance as well, but they do a waggle dance. If you're a fan of honey, next time you open a jar of honey, 1 pound of honey requires bees visiting 2 million flowers. So we know we use the honeybee as kind of a symbol of being industrious, bees and ants, but they certainly are. They actually they will go out into the field collecting at the end, and sometimes they don't make it back because they just got too old and they're dying out in the field, unfortunately, but they will work until they're done. 2 million flowers to make a pound. The beekeeping industry in the United States is huge, surprisingly huge, but lots of scales, mom and pop operations that have a couple of trucks and drive around to different crops, right? Versus bigger operations. This is almond fields in California where lots of beekeepers from across the country come and bring their hives to these semi-tractor trailers driving down highways with millions of bees in them. And occasionally I'll read where a tractor trailer like this jackknifes on a highway with all those. Can you imagine what that must be like? But look at all the bees that are in there. So the scale of beekeeping in America is pretty surprising. Honeybees alone provide between $15 and $20 billion in economic services and are responsible for pollinating over 130 different types of food that we eat. So 130 different kinds of things that we buy in the supermarket are supplied by honeybees. The almond industry is the single largest user of managed honeybees. California's almond crop, valued at over $6 billion, is almost 100% dependent on honeybee production and is a huge amount of the almonds that you and I consume. Every year, roughly 2 million colonies, about 80% of all managed bees in the US are trucked to California just for the almond bloom. 80% of America's honeybees all go to California for almonds. You know how many bees that is? 30 billion bees are there during the almond season. It's pretty insane. This picture comes from the New York Times, a Sunday magazine, which you can't see, it says that up there, but they call it the Super Bowl of beekeeping in one of the stories that they wrote about that. Honeybees also increase the weight, size, and uniformity of crops like blueberries, cherries, and apples, which directly increases the market price that farmers can command. Bees are so important that honeybees arrived in North America from Europe with the first European colonists who established a permanent colony, Jamestown in 1622. They brought honeybees along for 2 important reasons. One is they don't have sugar yet, not sugar cane, right? That comes later, so they want sweet stuff. But what we forget is candles were so important, and so they were really after, honey was nice, but beeswax is what you're really after for candles so you can see at night. So honeybees came in 1622 to North America. So that's the bee. Honeybee is number 1. Number 2 on the hit parade is the bumblebee. What I love is the American bumblebee goes by the scientific name Bombus pennsylvanicus. It was named in Pennsylvania. So we gave our name to the American honeybee. So honeybees are number 2 in importance because they pollinate a number of plants that are very important to us. And they pollinate different than their cousins, the honeybee. They do buzz pollination. They don't take their tongue and sip gently. they grab onto the flower and they shake it vigorously, and the pollen falls out onto them. So they practice what's been called buzz pollination. That's what they do with tomatoes. Not just tomatoes, but so honeybees don't really pollinate tomatoes. Bumblebees do. Blueberries and cranberries are buzz pollinated, so are all the squashes. And if you think about it, that makes a ton of sense because these are all native North American plants. So they didn't have honeybees for thousands of years, millions of years, however long they've been around. So they have been accustomed to being buzz pollinated by bumblebees. Number 2 on our list. Number 3 is somebody you might not know. It might be surprising. There are a bunch of solitary native bees in our yards. And one of them is called the mason bee. Now, mason, it does nest in holes. This is not the one that's digging though, that's drilling those holes. That's the carpenter bee. That's bigger and looks just like a bumblebee. Bumblebee get blamed for carpenter bees, but they're different organisms. But the mason bee will find these holes in the ground or in wood, and then they will put in it a whole bunch of eggs, and like a little apartment house of eggs piled up. And the masonry part is they chew up wood and paper and make this lining, a little capsule, and they put pollen and nectar in there. So when the larva hatches out, it's got food to eat. So these are mason bees. They're very efficient pollinators. A single blue orchard mason bee, isn't that a beautiful color, that blue? Isn't that gorgeous? Can do the pollination work of 80 to 100 honeybees. They're very efficient workers. There are 4,000 native bees in the US. There's our mason bee gang down there. Here's the carpenter bee. If you have a deck, you probably are not a big fan of these guys. But these are all the other, most of them are solitary, unlike the honeybee. This is one you may have seen and not noticed it, but it's a small native bee, bright green. Look for it now. It's called a sweat bee, the metallic green sweat bee. Sweat bees are given that name because they like the salt on our, so if we're gardening and where our arms are covered in sweat, they'll come and land on you. They're not going to sting you. They want salt. There we go. Most of which nest in the ground like the green metallic guy does. P.S. Just to when we often talk about getting bee stings, and what we're really talking about is yellow jacket stings. So yellow jackets are not bees, but the yellow jacket is a ground nesting wasp, not a bee at all. So the yellow jacket doesn't have the same stinger as a bee. A yellow jacket has a smooth stinger, so it can, of course, sting you multiple times. So when I was a 12-year-old kid, I stepped in a nest and went up my jeans. It was not a happy day. Number 4 might be a new for a lot of you, and you've seen these hoverflies. If you've had a sweet drink outside in the summer, like you're sitting outside at McDonald's or the Wawa, you've had a hoverfly come visit you, and they look like they're bees. They sort of like camouflage, trying to scare you with their bee-like, but they're pretty harmless. But they're important pollinators. So flies are the second most important pollinator group from insects after bees. So bees number 1, flies number 2. If you're an entomology geek, there are true flies. There are insects who are flies, the flies. Flies have really big eyes, so good vision. And the most important thing that flies have is 2 wings, 1 and 2. Most other insects that have wings have 4, like butterflies and bees. But the true flies only have 2 wings. The 3rd and 4th wings have been reduced to these, you can see that little structure right there. It's like a little knob, like a stick with a knob on it, and they spin like gyroscopes. And so these guys can be really acrobatic in how they fly. So those are the true flies. 5 then is butterflies and moths in terms of importance of pollinating. So remember the title, The Buzz About Bees, Pollinators in Peril. So these are some of the pollinators. Now let's switch and talk about some of the perils. And we'll start with honeybees, since they've gotten a lot of attention. You've probably heard a lot about these guys. But this is from Penn State's Alumni Magazine, and I'm going to read the story from this beekeeper named Hackenberg. On November 12, 2006, I pulled into a location in Florida where I'd left 400 hives. 3 weeks before, they were fine beehives full of bees, Within 3 weeks, all but 30-something hives out of 400 had flat out disappeared. So there I was, just sitting on a gravel lot next to all these empty hives, and there's no dead bodies on the ground, there's no bees in the hive, there's no wax moths or hive beetles, no enemies of bees, nothing trying to rob out the honey the way they usually do. The bees just vanished. This led to a name, colony collapse disorder, as this became more prevalent. And then a lot of research has been done on colony collapse disorder and why hives just seem to be disappearing. The queen's there, but most of the workers were gone. So it's a very weird thing happening. In fact, a few years after, here, 2013, Time Magazine, A World Without Bees, the price we'll pay if we don't figure out what's killing the honeybee. So a lot of research was done, and quickly, because obviously they're so important to our agricultural economy. And one of the fingers began being pointed on, here's a long word, neonicotinoid pesticides. Neonicotinoid, new, nicotine, they're like nicotine, oid, shapish, kind of like, right? So a new version of nicotine or a new version of something that's kind of like nicotine. So neonicotinoids, and you can see the funny color of the corn on the right. Essentially, the corn is sprayed with, it's coated with the neonicotinoid. It's then planted. So all the tissues of the corn have the neonicotinoid pesticide in it. So, and the pollen has it, the corn itself has it. So insects, of course, were then eating it, and they were ingesting that. The Xerxes Society, Xerxes is, I believe, a Persian god, but also became the genus name of a kind of butterfly who went extinct. So the Xerxes Society is the foremost gathering of scientists who pay attention to invertebrate conservation. So they're worrying about insects. So they published out a big study, how neonicotinoids can kill bees, and they published the science. So a number of things happen. If they take in too much of it, it can be acute paralysis and death quickly within hours. So the worker bee is out in the field and doesn't come back. Or chronic and sublethal doses of it impairs their memory. What they were discovering was happening is that the bees couldn't find their way back to the hive. So the neonicotinoid was affecting their nervous system, and they lost their ability to navigate, and they weren't coming back. And then at worst, at a certain level, the whole colony collapses by a failure of the queen to lay eggs, and the colony doesn't survive the winter. So they began pushing through on this. And what's happened in the 10, 15 years since this came out is that they seem to have figured something out. There seemed to be an accommodation. And I think most of the accommodation is that beekeepers have more hives than they used to, based on the assumption they're going to lose half of them in the winter. So that's the accommodation that's been made. They never really solved this, but we push on because now there's a whole new thing that's giving them yet another double whammy. As of early 2026, this is from the Xerxes, the honeybee industry is reeling from what scientists are calling the worst die-off in US history, so worse than even the colony collapse disorder. Between 24 and 25, beekeepers lost an estimated 55.6% of their managed colonies, the highest loss rate since tracking began. Unlike the mysterious disappearances of the mid-2000s, today's crisis is driven by a much clearer, more lethal set of synergistic threats. And the most important of these is a mite that they've discovered. You've been sitting outside on your lawn furniture, and there's a little tiny red thing goes running around on your lawn furniture. That's a mite. There are lots of them. They are arachnids. They're cousins of spiders, not insects. They don't fly, 8 legs, but there are many species of them. And one of the mites, unfortunately, is essentially a parasite on honeybees. It's called the Varroa mite. Varroa is the genus name. The scientific name you will love, Varroa destructor, because of what it can do to honeybees. And it was native to Asia. And in Asia, it co-evolved alongside the Asian honeybee, a different species of honeybee. So we're Apis mellifera. It was Apis, a different name. So same genus, different species. But colonies in Asia, Western honeybee colonies in Asia that were close to the Asian honeybee, wild ones, picked up varroa mites and they began transporting it all over the world. So suddenly now the varroa mite is everywhere. On average, about 29% of all colonies are too weak to survive into the next year because they lose so many worker bees. It attacks both the adults and the larvae. It sucks out the fat content of the body. And unfortunately, what it also does is they have lots of viruses that they carry. So while it's sucking, it's passing these viruses along, including some that cause deformed wings in the adults and some that paralyze the bees. So it's the primary cause of the massive 1.7 million colony losses reported last year in 2025. So this is fresh reporting. There is a miticide, an insecticide-ish thing that's for mites only, called amitraz. Of course, beekeepers began using it as much as they can. And what happens, a small percentage of the mites aren't impacted by it, and those are the ones that then reproduce. And so we're at a place now where virtually all sampled colonies that they look at have resistance to the miticide. So whereas the miticide once worked, it no longer does because we used it so prolifically that the ones who were able to get through are the ones who pass their genes on to the next generation. So the bees right now are kind of reeling from this double dose of things. There was this colony collapse from neonicotinoids, which we're still using, and then the varroa mite. So how's everybody else doing? Remember, bumblebee was number 2. Xerxes says that more than 1/4 of all North American bumblebees are facing some degree of extinction risk. A couple of species of bumblebees have disappeared from North America in recent decades, have not been seen anyway. And the common one, the North American one that comes to the Pennsylvanicus seems to be hanging on. There are various levels of extinction risk. So they're sliding towards not quite in danger, but just above that. And there's a number of things. So habitat loss, there aren't as many wildflower fields as there used to be. Like, the old vacant lot becomes a new subdivision. The prairie is disappearing. Climate change is a big issue, especially in the South, because as it warms, look how fuzzy these guys are. They like actually a coldish winter. They kind of are more cool adapted. And as it warms up, especially in the South, it's pushing their range and they're not where they used to be. So that gives them thermal stress when it's too hot. So even up here, if it gets too hot, like they're not used to 100-degree days for several days in a row, so they could be stressed out. There's a parasite, a fungal parasite that infects bumblebees, unfortunately, that climate change seems to be allowing to spread quicker. There's something that scientists are calling a hunger gap. If all of our suburban lawns have spring wildflowers, what are the bumblebees going to get in the summer? So they get lots of spring stuff because all of us like our spring wildflowers, and then in the summer they begin struggling. In the fall there's even less. So they don't get food all year long, and neonicotinoids are impacting them as well. Switching over to butterflies, Xerxes published a year ago that said that we're losing butterflies at the rate of 1.3% per year. In the contiguous United States, 1.3% doesn't sound so bad, but if you extend that over many years, the translation is more than 1/5 of butterflies in number have disappeared between 2000 and 2020. So if you did population counts, there would be 20% less, 20% fewer butterflies than back then. Worse, over 40% of assessed species fell in numbers by 50% or more. And 24 species suffered more than 90% losses. So butterflies are struggling. Some of you may have been following the issues with the monarch butterfly. It's been getting a lot of attention because it's spending its time in the winter in Mexico in these secluded mountain valleys. So they're on their way up. They're probably somewhere around here right now. maybe, in the mid-Atlantic, and maybe the first ones will be coming to us. So east of the Rockies, they go to Mexico. West of the Rockies, they're all going down to the California coast. So scientists have been counting, they've been doing surveys of the number of butterflies that are there. And the surveys are done by the number of hectares of the area of land that the butterfly population seems to take up in those forests in Mexico. And you can look at the trend line in the graph going down. So millions, much less. There is some good news the last 3 years. 3 years ago, it was really a horrific number, one of the lowest ever. And so this is the 30 in a row that's been an increase. So that's good. And out west, it's even worse. They've really plummeted. They used to be in the millions, and now there's only like tens of thousands of Western monarchs. So the monarchs are struggling. In fact, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature publishes a red book. It's a list of endangered species, and they've put the migratory monarch on as an endangered species. That has doesn't have any sway in the United States. It has been, the monarch butterfly has been recommended for looking at by the United States for the endangered species list, but it's unlikely in the current politics there'll be any new endangered species declared, not for a while. So that's the monarch. So there's a few specific studies, but insects in general. The scientists in Germany, whose last name happens to be Malaise, which is a funny last name. So this is the Malaise trap. It's essentially a screen, a vertical screen on the forest floor, and an insect flies along and hits the screen, and then it wants to go up to get over the screen, and at the top is a collecting vial with alcohol. So the insect flies up and falls into that and gets collected. So this professor has had his graduate students put out these Malaise traps for 30 years in multiple locations in Germany. So he has got 30 years of data, and just came out recently, a 3-decade survey shows drastic decline in insect populations. The raw numbers of insects have declined by 75% over the last 3 decades. This is one study in multiple places. 63 nature preserves in Germany showed a big decline. Is that what's happening elsewhere? I'm sorry. But this study has gotten picked up in other places. This is by CNN. Okay, so is this happening elsewhere? You ever remember driving around and getting big bug splats on your car? I don't know if you've noticed that you get fewer bug splats on your car than you're used to, especially on those big trips on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, right? It happens less, but actually a Danish scientist decided to quantify that. And actually over 20 years have been counting the number of dead insects on car windshields on 2 stretches of road. Amazing that he thought to do this. And this researcher found an 80% decrease in the number of insects splattering on cars. So 75% in this German study, 80% in a Danish study, in a similar ballpark. Another study using sweep nets and sticky plates in the same area showed pretty much the same numbers. So we got some couple of studies coming out now. And so the New York Times, which seems to be on top of these stories, published a Sunday magazine article, "The Insect Apocalypse is Here. What does it mean for the rest of life on Earth?" And now you're beginning to see the phrase insect apocalypse in the press. And this book here, Silent Earth, Averting the Insect Apocalypse, by British entomologist Dave Goulson, and other books have been coming out in this topic as well. Xerces Society published just recently its study on global threats to insects. They call it Death by 1,000 Cuts, including pollution, urbanization, introduced species, agricultural intensification, insecticides, deforestation, fire, storm intensity, global warming, droughts, etc., etc. So lots of things. Go back to farming, and we're talking about the neonicotinoids before, but related to that is Roundup Ready corn and soybeans. So the corn and soybeans that we consume now has been genetically altered so that farmers can spray herbicide, the herbicide Roundup on it. and they don't have to worry about weeds anymore, which is great for the farmer. But the problem is there are no of those other plants in between farm fields or in between rows or in between this farm and that farm. So, for example, there's far fewer milkweed, especially in big swaths of the Midwest, than there used to be. And many have called the Midwest a milkweed desert. And milkweed is the necessary plant for monarch butterflies to lay their eggs on. So she will only lay her eggs on this because that's the dinner plate for the caterpillar. When it comes out, it begins eating the milkweed. So that's one of the big reasons for the monarch struggle is the lack of milkweed in much of the United States. And we talked about neonicotinoids a second ago. We'll just come back and finish that conversation. That they are systemic. They're in all the tissues. They affect the nervous system of the insect. They also dissolve in water. Between 94 and 100% of all non-organic corn is sprayed with neonicotinoids, which impacts 90 million acres. 90 million acres is 3 Pennsylvanias, by the way. Between 60 and 90% of our soybeans are sprayed with neonicotinoids, and they're Roundup ready. Over 50% of cotton is treated, 100% of canola and sugar beets. And then Shopper's Guide did a study, and they found neonicotinoids in the food that we're eating, and we've not done much studies on that yet. So we know that they impact the nervous system of insects. We have very different nervous systems, but we don't know what they do. So modern agriculture is roughly 48 times more toxic to bees today than it was in the mid-1990s. The neonicotinoids, 90% of it so it's coating the seed, goes into the water and the soil and to non-crop plants. It goes into the water, into the air, and only 2 to 3% is taken up by plants, unfortunately. So even though they're all coated, not much of it goes to what it's supposed to be doing. So that's a whole couple of big issues. Let's switch to a third, which is the good old American lawn, which has no ecological value to almost any other species besides us. Now we need lawns, we need to play, for example, but there are 40 to 50 million acres of lawn in the US right now, about the size of Florida. That's just lawn. And they support 0 species of native bees and 0 pollinators, unfortunately. So lawn is an issue, and then climate change with intensifying heat, bigger storms, flooding, wildfires. So those are also impacting insects as well. So lots of threats to insects, and we can see what the trends have been doing. So the big question is, what do we do? What can you do? How can we all help with this? So let's get into that part. The first thing, maybe the most important thing you do is plant a lot of native wildflowers, shrubs, and trees. And happily, I'm seeing lots more natives now in places like Home Depot. So native plants are the ones that have been in North America, in Pennsylvania for millions of years, and they're the ones that the local insects know how to deal with. So incorporating natives into your property at whatever level you can is hugely important. If I were to plant one thing tomorrow, it's butterfly weed. There's the scientific name, Asclepias tuberosa. There is a butterfly bush. This is not that. Butterfly bush is not native. Butterfly weed is a milkweed, but it's a smaller, gentler, more compact milkweed than the big, aggressive, common milkweed that you might see in a vacant lot. So why butterfly weed is so great, and why it's my number one, is it's the plant that the mother monarch is going to lay her eggs on, and so you'll be raising monarch caterpillars if you plant that. But when it's in flower, everything comes to it. So all the butterflies and other pollinators, all the bees, all will be at it. So that's number one. Number two, bee balm, wild bergamot, monarda, which happily comes in 2 different colors. There's this lilac-y color, and then a bright scarlety one, which is irresistible for hummingbirds. But again, lots of butterflies and bees will come to that. Bumblebees will come to this one. Mountain mint is maybe something you've not heard of. It's not the showiest flower. It's got a weird scientific name, so it's going to be hard to ask for. Pycnanthemum is its name. I'm sure Redbud Nursery, not too far from here, if you tell them you want mountain mint, I'm sure they can help you and they'd be thrilled to get that to you. Why this is good is because of the diversity of insects that will come to it. So lots of flies, lots of beetles, lots of wasps. It'll get everybody on it. So that's a good one. Goldenrods are great because they don't give you hay fever, contrary to what those commercials do. The pollen is too heavy. It doesn't float in the air. Goldenrods are great because they bloom in the late fall, and so if you're a migrating monarch butterfly, you need that to get to Mexico. So, and if you don't want to plant goldenrod, that's fine. Asters, this is New England, beautiful purple aster, but there are lots of asters you can get as well. I've got asters in my yard and they bloom even to Thanksgiving. There are still a few hanging on. So you're going to get, when insects need that one last meal before they go into hibernation, asters and goldenrods are there for them. Number 5 is not a flower at all, but it's an oak tree. Because the oak tree, any oak tree, supports the most biological diversity of almost any tree. There are more species of little bugs that eat oak tree leaves and bark than any other tree. It's crazy how many things. 500 species of larval pollinators are adapted to eat oaks. So get an oak tree. Oak trees are the best for climate change too, because they'll store carbon for 500 years, and they got huge root systems that'll soak up a lot of water. So if you have room for an oak tree, which you might not. If you don't want to go daintier, the black cherry, the wild black cherry, is another great one. It only supports 400 species of pollinating insects, not 500. But if you plant the two side by side, you've got 900 species of pollinating insects who will be happy with your yard. This also has beautiful flowers. The cherry has beautiful flowers, which are great for lots of pollinating insects. And then they become these little cherries, which birds will crave. Migrating birds will be grabbing these from your yard too. That's a great one. So there's a bunch of things you can plant. Something else you can do, a number of organizations like Xerxes on the left have these Leave the Leaves programs, which is asking people, especially people like us in suburban places, to leave messy corners in your yards, or maybe a section that you don't have to worry about. Lots of us love to blow leaves off of every scrap of our yard, but if you leave some of these corners messy, it drove my daughter crazy, but I did. It's where these insects go to hibernate and overwinter, and they come out later. Also, many of the lawn care companies start clearing it out too soon. They should let them go for a couple more weeks in the spring, so in case anything is sleeping, they get to emerge. So leave some leaves, not all your leaves, but you can leave some leaves. This situation doesn't really work for insect biological diversity, the lollipop tree with the mulch around it. So let's say you've got a tree and there are insects living up here. The larvae are up here. They're going to want to go somewhere quiet and pupate and then emerge as adults. So they're going to rappel down on little silk lines and come to this, and there's nothing, they can't get it, they don't know where to go. So if you have a tree like this, that's great, but plant flowers in a bed around it. So at least they got someplace to hide. This is just sort of, unfortunately, it's death to them as they rappel down. So something like that in the back, even natives below here would be even better. Sad to say, mosquito spraying kills a lot more than mosquitoes. I know none of us love mosquitoes, and there is a new invasive mosquito that we didn't used to have who's active during the day, like we needed that. So I know mosquitoes are really hard. I'm enjoying being outside now because mosquitoes haven't come out yet, but any day now. But the problem with mosquito spraying is that only 1/10,000% of the pesticide reaches a mosquito. The rest is going to other things. They spray during the day. Guess who's not active during the day? So they're spraying when mosquitoes are likely not in your yard, and they're getting the insects who likely are in your yard, who are going to be butterflies, bees, and flies. There's my plea for mosquito spraying. Bee hotels have gotten a lot of popularity. They're kind of cool. Do a lot of reading, because there's a lot of maintenance involved with these, because there's a lot of wasps and things who will hang out and parasitize the bees who come here, because they know there's lots of bees here. But so it needs upkeep. But architecturally, they're pretty interesting. So you can try that, or you want to go more natural, just pile up some rocks or some branches like this, cross sections of sticks and logs, and the bees will find places to hang out in there. All right. You can get your yard certified as a pollinator habitat or a pollinator-friendly garden. Lots of organizations and even landscapers do this now. My yard is a monarch way station. So I've got milkweed for monarch butterflies. I've got, there's my New England aster in the back there for the fall. So doesn't need much, but monarchs, I've raised monarchs in many years, which is great. If you really want to help, going organic is huge. That's probably one of the most important things you might be able to do, and then support organizations like Xerxes who work on this. There's an organization called Homegrown National Park, which is an idea of Doug Tallamy, who's an insect biologist who's written great books. I'm sure the library here has some of his books. They're brilliant books. He's from University of Delaware. His idea is a homegrown national park that if each of us with yards begin to connect to his homegrown national park, that we can have a whole network of yards across the United States and have millions of acres of yards that are natural habitats. And his name is a homegrown national park. So you can join that movement, which is really sweet. This is on Hulu right now, Secrets of the Bees. James Cameron is the producer of it. Amazing. Titanic. It's about bees, really extraordinary. The camera work is incomparable. It's really unbelievable. So check that out. Stream the Secrets. I think it's like 4 parts, 3 or 4 parts. Really great. And it's got a British narrator. Who doesn't love a British narrator for your nature special? So lots of bees, giving us lots of ecosystem services that need our help, as do lots of butterflies and all the insects that provide 1 out of 3 bites of our food. So there's a bunch of thoughts. There's the buzz about bees and why they're in peril and what we can do about that. I want to thank you all for being here. Would love to have Selden signed, but next time we do this, you can do this. But get the book at Main Point Books. I'm sure they've got it. And I'm only time for questions. Thank you all. Thanks again.
I just checked the catalog and it's, almost, maybe 15 Delaware County libraries have it. Our copy is here if you're interested, but in many libraries, it's checked out. And this came out.
Is this Wild Philly?
23, yes.
Oh, yeah, good.
Yeah, in 23 your book.
There's 25 walks. 4 of them are in the spring that take you to places with great wildflowers. So grab the book now from the library and
Yes,
go
it's
for
very
it.
popular and.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to EAC and thanks to Amber and the Radnor Conservancy.
Thank you, Mike.
Questions?
Any questions?
Yeah.
How about dandelions? Are they good for bees?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, how about dandelions? Are they good for bees? They're not bad. Dandelions are not native to the US. So they are native to Europe. And so guess what? Honeybees know what they are. So they'll sit on them. That's fine. Dandelions can be aggressive. They were brought here deliberately to be in gardens in people's backyards because a dandelion is green like 10 months of the year. Like they'll become green early in like late February, early March, and they're still green in like December. I mean, it's crazy. So they provided vitamins. They were essential vitamins back in the day. And you can eat the leaves. The roots can be made into coffee. The flowers can become dandelion wine. I recommend don't spend too much money at Whole Foods and buy dandelion greens. Go pick some for free, as long as you know what the site is and it wasn't sprayed with anything. But in the scheme of things, You can make yourself crazy trying to get dandelions out of your yard, but they are providing something for honeybees. The other natives, not as much, but they like a native bee will see yellow and they'll go check it out. Yeah.
I made dandelion wine.
You've made dandelion wine? You like it?
I had to go pick the dandelions.
Yeah. How'd it taste?
It was pretty good.
Yes.
Cooked dandelion.
I'm so glad. That's great.
Yeah, about lawn, and I just add that clover makes a great lawn,
Clover does.
and it flowers, the bees love it, and you mow it, you keep it at a controlled height. I've got masses of clover in my lawn, and of course, this is green, it's any grass, and it's better.
Yeah.
That's why I've been around.
It's putting nitrogen in the soil too, which is good.
My neighbor spends a small fortune. My neighbor spends a small fortune on his every year to get the clover out of his yard, and I don't. And his yard turns brown every summer, and mine stays green.
Thanks to the clover.
We're talking about clover if you can, for people on Zoom, right? The benefits of clover, which is great. Yep.
Do you
Yeah.
maintain a beehive?
I'm sorry?
Do you maintain a
I do
beehive?
not. No, I do not. Yeah.
Thank you for your experience.
Thank you.
I actually live in Utah, Beehive State.
Beehive.
That's right.
We have a lot of honeybee production here.
A lot of honeybee production in,
Utah.
oh, in Utah, of course. I'm sorry, question here.
You mentioned about the mosquito spray.
Mosquito spraying.
Yes, how the spring treatment where people spray the pesticides and the herbicides on the lawn, wouldn't that also affect the bees who nest on the
Yeah.
lawn?
So mosquito spraying is gonna affect all the insects that are in that area, unfortunately. And I don't, what's that?
The herbicides that are applied to the lawn in the springtime.
The herbicides, right. So you see lots of the lawn care companies have greener versions of their lawn care company. Now, I've seen more of that happening now than back in the day, which is great. But I do see a lot of mosquito spraying, yeah. And the challenge for you is whether you want to talk to one of your neighbors doing that or not, or, that's always very hard to do.
I don't think they know that, like.
I'm sure the neighbor doesn't know that
Killing mosquitoes.
essentially it's not work, it's not,
I know, but I
it's
don't
peace of mind, but it's not gonna do very much, unfortunately.
The EAC has a alternative to chemical spraying for mosquitoes. And if you're aware of our May 2nd plant giveaway at the Radnor Township building, Saturday, May 2nd, we'll have information on mosquito dunks, which is basically a cake of a bacterium that you put in water out on your porch along with some plant scraps. And the mosquito, of course, lays eggs in the water, but the larvae get attacked by the bacteria and don't mature. So it's an ecologically safe way to limit the reproduction of mosquitoes.
Right. And some people put them in their bird baths, so the birds can enjoy the bird bath and you're not growing mosquitoes. Which bird baths, if you don't change the water like every 3 days in a bird bath, you'll see larval mosquitoes in it. Yeah. And mosquitoes need surprisingly little water. They need just like a puddle in somebody's, in the eaves of somebody's house. If the water gets stuck up there, they just need that for a few days and they're good to go, so, yeah.
Just related to the
Yes.
mosquito issue. So when I'm driving around, I see a lot of signs that say mosquito shield. Is that?
Mosquito shields.
I think that's what it is. And when I have a son here, and I spoke to him about, and he said, oh no, this spray just targets mosquitoes, it doesn't affect anything else supposedly. I'm very skeptical of that. Is that a better explanation?
I'm gonna have to look into that because the information that I getting from multiple sources is that there isn't just one mosquito spray. There's the dunks is specifically the mosquitoes, but not the spray itself. Yeah.
So I can question.
Yeah.
Dr. Allen, we had answered that question
in one of his webinars, and he said their group did research on that, and they found that these products, none of these products kill just
Mosquitoes.
They
Good,
kill
thank you.
everything.
Good,
Because
thank
the
you.
difference is the dunks, it's attacking the larval form of it, whereas the spray, it's gonna be everywhere.
For flying insects.
Yeah, so it's
right.
not gonna be isolated.
Yeah.
I'd be skeptical of anything that's sprayed.
I'll be sure to share that.
Yeah, so it's garden season, so hopefully you got some good ideas for some ways you can garden to help some of the pollinators out. Right? Thank you, Dan, again. Thank you all. Thank you all for coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you for staying on.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Thank you.
The big technical difficulty.
Yeah.
So